Now, when you're juicing, you mentioned juicing was sort of concentrating. What it's doing is actually liberating the oxalic acid in a watery solution so that the fiber and the other elements in plants don't hold it in. So now you have oxalic acid freely flowing in a watery solution, and that allows it to absorb very quickly from inside the gut into the blood. So it gets into the blood. We call that absorption. And the more you water it down, AKA almond milk, lots of water, and a few almonds with all that liberated, pureed oxalic acid gets in real fast. Tea is another example of this high oxalic acid, soluble. We call that soluble when it's able to disassociate into the ions like that and float in the water. Gets very quickly into your body up in the stomach. The more soluble, the more dilute, the more quickly it gets and the more it can move into your tissues and the more toxic it is. So in the old literature from 1823, they said the more dilute the oxalic acid, the more toxic it is. And that's why, because it can now, it's not blocked by fiber. It's not blocked by its own concentration. It's more free to roam. And it goes from your stomach and upper small intestine, where there isn't a lot of bacteria, by the way, and your stomach shouldn't have that high, that low pH, high acid environment in the stomach. There's no degrading of oxalic acid in the stomach. The stomach is a potential entry point for oxalic acid, and it goes straight into the bloodstream. And now you have ionic oxalic acid interfering with the calcium in the blood potentially. At some point, it can bind with calcium in the blood. That can lower the ionic calcium in the blood, which is a problem for all the tissues, but most especially for the pacemaker of the heart and can cause arrhythmias and things. So that's called hypocalcemia. It also is affecting the physiology of the white blood cells right away. And within 40 minutes of a spinach smoothie, you have inflamed, damaged immune cells that no longer respond well to infection. So the effects on the cell have to do with interfering with calcium again, causing immune suppression. So now you're more prone to infection because you're damaging your circulating white blood cells. The red blood cells don't like it either. It interferes with their ability to make energy. And if it slows down their ATP production enough, they can start having trouble moving sodium from the cell. They get swollen up with water because the salt draws that water in, and your red blood cells explode. So both white and red blood cells have a shortened lifespan if they're overly exposed to oxalic acid. And if you're eating a smoothie for breakfast and a peanut butter sandwich for lunch and a sweet potato at dinner, every 4 hours you're flooding your bloodstream. And it takes 24 hours for food to move from mouth to toilet, right? So you've got all this time potentially with oxalic acid coming into the body following a meal. So you can get overlapping waves coming into your vascular system, affecting not just the blood cells, but also the vascular walls as well. And where does that, everything you absorb from your stomach and intestines, where is that going? Straight into the liver. The liver has to use this glutathione to protect itself from the damaging effects of oxalate. And you get an increased inflammatory state in the liver, and the liver's ability to protect itself from other toxins is compromised. Mm-hmm. The liver can actually collect oxalate. I mean, if you're bombing it with peanut butter and potatoes and chocolate and spinach and turmeric and quinoa and beet greens and, meal after meal after meal, snack. I mean, people will snack between meals on almonds and these trail mixes too. So you nuts and chocolate are all day long, right? Yeah. Your poor liver. Now that blood goes through the liver puts out additional oxalate. So the liver does not metabolize oxalate whatsoever. Forget the idea of metabolizing oxalic acid. That is not what happens. The liver makes oxalic acid as part of what it does. So the liver adds to the more inflamed and damaged liver is, the more it makes more oxalate. So the blood that came from your stomach, when it leaves the liver a few minutes later, it has more oxalate than it did even when it left the stomach, because the liver's adding some layer. Now that oxalic acid is back into general circulation after it's left the liver, and it's heading 2 inches up into your heart. That's the next stop. So now you have this oxalate-rich blood in the heart. No wonder the pacemaker doesn't like it. It goes straight to the heart muscle. Like the heart gets a very full dose, the fullest dose the body will ever see, because some of it will get stuck in the heart tissues, and eventually you get crystals potentially building up in heart tissue. Then the body pumps that blood from one side of the heart into the lungs to get oxygen, And the next pump pumps it back into the heart and the other side of the heart. So now you've hit your liver, you've hit your immune cells, you've hit your red blood cells, you've hit your vascular tissue, you've hit your heart and your lungs. And now oxalic acid from your spinach salad and so on is moving out through the whole body. And the blood system narrows down to these little tiny capillaries that are just like one cell, barely one cell fits through, the really tiny. That's the feeder stuff. High pressure, you push out the nutrients, the oxygen, and all the things the cell needs, including oxalic acid. So the cells do not need oxalic acid. It's a toxin, and maybe the lymph tissue picks it up. Some of it gets picked back up into the circulation and keeps going. But in the meantime, you get oxalate exposure all over your body, in your thyroid gland, all of your glands, your eyeballs, your teeth, your gums, your nasal cavities, your ears, your brain. It gets anywhere. There's not a tissue it can't get to.
Wow. Okay, I have so many questions. First of all, here we are drinking our spinach smoothie, thinking that we're getting our iron and supporting our red blood cells and supporting our immune systems. It's doing the exact opposite.